Today, Ryan and I have a look for you for a game called Echoes of Time. This one's from Cranio Creations, and it is one of the fastest paced engine builders that I've played in a long time. You're building a tableau of cards, and you're going to find and see engines really quickly. But timing is interesting because there's kind of a conveyor belt mechanism as well.
Yeah, it's Echoes of Time. Time is a factor here. And David mentioned the tableau builder. And if you're seeing it right now, you've got a tableau that we made at the end of the game. Now, the game is going to end when a certain number of cards are out in your tableau, but there's a variety of different cards. And we're thinking like games like Veil of Eternity or Seasons.
Yes.
Almost every card in this deck is unique. Now, there are some of these like special artifacts where there's 2 copies of each one, but generally they're all unique cards with unique abilities, unique factions, and things that will combo together really well. I mean, if you can find those combos and play those combos out smartly.
Yeah, for sure. These cards are going to do a wide range of things, all the things that you might expect in a tableau builder. There's some end-of-game scoring, some ongoing effects. The activation in this one is really interesting because it has also to do with time. This conveyor belt, the way it works, is as you play cards out of your hand, you're going to pay the cost, and the cost is always an amount of cards. So the cards are already multi-use in that respect. Once you play a card, it's in a certain slot because at the top left of the card, it shows not only the cost, but the slot that it goes in. When you play, you can play into an empty slot. You can play into a slot that has 1 other card, but each slot can only hold 2. But at a certain point in the game, at the beginning of each round, time is going to march on, and these cards are going to eventually fall off the end of the board. And when they do, they're going to go into your tableau, which is when all the things happen. So if it has an immediate effect, that'll happen. This one has an ability that I can use during my turn, but only when the right icon is off the end of the board. So in this case, this yellow icon needs to be the tile that's off the right side of my board. It's a very interesting mechanism because the tiles that you have, you're going to have 2 blue, 2 yellow, and 1 red. And of course, the red effects are probably particularly vicious or particularly powerful, so they're not going to happen that often. But you're going to be able to do a mixture of activating cards, playing cards, getting things to happen to really start scoring points and build those engines. But you can do that in many different ways. I had an engine that kind of just gave me points, and when I got points, I got more points. So I was collecting a lot of points throughout the game, whereas Ryan had a very different tableau going.
Yeah, I heavily focused on those activated abilities. And on your turn, you can activate all of these different cards in front of you, like David said, if the timing is right, if the card that's sitting off to the side matches. So here, I have the blue flame. This is my active. This is the time that we're in, the time of the blue flame. So I get to look out here, and I get to see any abilities that I have that I can activate. You place little activation tokens on them, but these are going to do a wide variety of things as well. They're going to let you play cards. They're going to let you move cards down your tableau. Now, you can never do anything that shifts the order of the actual like elements. We're all going to experience the shifting in the same order, and all of our abilities are going to trigger kind of, in that same fashion. But the cards themselves can be moved. Now, there is an inherent action system, which we'll talk about, that will let you do these things. But for me, my benefit was finding them out on these cards so I could do a wide variety of fiddly things before I even took my action. But again, like I might have had something that was heavy for blue. I even had a card that said whenever I activate a blue action, I get to draw another card. And in a game like this, where you're spending cards to pay for cards, it's good to have card draw. But on turns when I didn't have that blue, they were a little less fun. So I tried to get some cards that also triggered on yellow. And that was like my whole game, was activating all these, because you can do that before you take your actual actions.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about the theming and the fact that timing is involved with building your tableau, but the structure of the game is actually quite simple. Just to give you the lay of the land here, in addition to the tableaus we have built, at the beginning of the game, there's going to be a number of these source cards put out on the table per player. That is one of the things that you're trying to go after, and in fact is tied to one of the ways that you can end a game or trigger the end of the game. Everyone's going to have one of these player boards with those tiles, and across the bottom of the player board, it kind of goes through the natural course of a round. The beginning of a round is going to start with sort of time marching on. So you're going to remove that last tile and put it off the end, and take the one that was off and put it back at the beginning.
In a continuous tableau.
Yes.
Which is something that I really love that they did that.
Yeah, Ryan's a sucker for the panoramas.
I am.
And then everyone's going to draw one card, And then in turn order, everybody's going to take one action at a time, and you only have 2 cubes. So this is the first thing that you're going to notice about this game is after you play a couple of rounds, you're like, oh, 2 actions is not a lot.
That's why you got to get that tableau built.
You got to get a lot of effects going so that you can do some other things. Because when you take your actions, you can do a number of things. When you use a cube, you can place it here to draw 2 cards. Very simple. You can place it here to play a card. And again, when you play a card, you have to pay the cost, etc., and so forth. This one lets you move cards, not the tiles, but the cards themselves. So you can move 1 card twice, 2 spaces to the right, or 2 cards once. And then this last one is associated with those sources. This is where you can conquer or fortify.
Yeah, you'll notice when you're playing these cards, you're not just necessarily focused on the tableau abilities. You're also looking at these numbers in the corner. A lot of the actual like creatures you can summon now. No, I went a very heavy artifact route, so I didn't have a ton of creatures.
I didn't have many of them.
But each one of these creatures has a strength. The whole kind of goal of here, a way to get points is to conquer these sources. Every source is going to have a requirement of strength that it needs to conquer. So when you're looking at your tableau, you're kind of choosing, I'm going to decide to conquer with at least for this one was 1 strength. David conquered one that required 2 strength. But the thing that you're doing when you conquer is you're tucking the cards underneath. So if you have a very powerful effect, either an activated effect or an ongoing effect or an in-game scoring effect that's on a card, when you tuck it under to conquer a source, it's going to go away. Now, where the player interaction in this game comes in is that you can conquer other players' sources. So I've conquered this source of growth. It's going to give me 2 points at the end of the game. And I got this instant effect when conquering it. And now I have this blue flame ability. Well, David might want to take that from me just to maybe draw 2 cards or to get access to that blue flame ability. He can do that as long as he can conquer it at a higher value than I have. So I need at least 1 to conquer it. I conquer it with a 2. David has a number of guys that equal to 3. He could conquer that from me. My guys become free again, but he gets that source card. He gets that instant ability. He gains access to that tableau ability. And if he holds on to it for the rest of the game, he gets access to those points.
Yeah. And the other thing you can do is to fortify it. So if he didn't want me to conquer a source that he had taken, during the course of the game, you can assign some of your cards, the critter cards, if you will, to this card. And then another action is to fortify. So if you've actually gotten the secondary strength on there, you can fortify. And then all those cards that are tucked literally go away completely. They're not going to count for anything else and for the rest of the game. They are under that source card, but no one else can take that from you. Not to mention, it's going to immediately allow you to take the fortify action, which is generally pretty strong, and it's also going to increase the number of points that source is worth.
Yeah, mine went from 2 to 6 points when I conquered it, and I used this 4 push to take a card that came in at 5 time. I pushed it almost all the way to the end. It was well timed, if you pardon the pun. Whereas David didn't fortify his because he was only getting 1 extra point, and it might be better to just, all these guys are worth 2 points. So if you're committing multiple guys to fortifying, you better make sure that you're getting those points because like David said, they're just gone. If you're just conquering, at least those symbols at the top would score. A lot of the artifacts have in-game scoring that counts maybe different symbols you have. Those will still score, but the guys that are tucked under might as well not exist. So you do have to debate that. Now, in a 4-player game, you're using 4 sources. So the chances are that you're going to look around the board and say, okay, there's some really good ones. In a 2-player game, we only had 2 to choose from. And the game ends as soon as both are fortified, which I thought would be the in-game trigger. But that didn't end up happening because David never fortified his source.
Yeah, I didn't fortify. The other way the game can end is if one player has a total of 12 cards. And remember, if you have a source in front of you, it counts as 2. So Ryan actually was the one who triggered it in this game. But that can trigger the end of the game. And the game is going to end at the end of that round. Yeah. So once one of those 2 things happens, that is the final round.
3 things, because if all the victory points go away,
that too.
You use a special pool of victory points, you count them out. Based on the player count, it's 12 per player. So we were actually in a situation where David could have fortified that. I played the 12th card. We only had 7 victory points left. Now, notice, I had 1. David had all the rest. So when we said that we played very different engines, we did. And in our game, it was like 37 to 34 points. It was very, very close.
Still very close, but it felt very different. Ryan was jealously looking over every time I would take points. I took extra points.
That was such a good power.
And I had a couple cards that were just giving me points every time I played a new type of card. So I was just taking a couple points, maybe 3 points. And my points were stacking up. Ryan just had the 1, and he only got that about halfway through the game.
No, it's actually like the second to last round. I got 1 point.
But he had a bunch more cards played with a lot more points on those cards and a lot more endgame scoring on those
That
cards.
was where I really did it. Is I kept discarding all my creatures to play these artifacts, which all the artifacts are really powerful, and they cost a lot of time. But I really worked to keep trying to move things down to get all those in-game scoring. Now, anything that's on your tableau or on your timeline that's waiting to come out might as well not exist. You can't use those abilities. They don't score any points. So you really want to kind of anticipate when the game is ending. You do not want to end the game with a full timeline
That
of just
means-
cards. That means you were inefficient.
Very inefficient.
Or maybe
for
you
sure.
really thought you'd get one more turn and you had a big plan, but then somebody ended the game.
Yeah, sometimes people just get suckered into wanting to build a massive tableau. And that's the last thing I'll say about this. I would say if you like tableau builders, if you're familiar with games like Veil of Eternity or Seasons, this definitely gives those sorts of vibes. Clearly a very different game as the way it plays. But I think if you enjoy those kind of games, you'll probably find something here that you'll enjoy as well. And this is a very fast-paced game too.
It is
The fact that you only have 2 turns and you're taking them one at a time. Yeah, 2 actions per round, and you just go back and forth and back and forth. And you've played both of those cubes, and you're like, oh, okay. But you kind of have to look at the overall game as opposed to the turn, because they kind of bleed into one another. At the end of a turn, you might use your last action to play cards thinking, okay, I'm going to move those forward at the beginning of my next one because I've got the right flame effect. Then those cards will be able to be activated. So you can really put together some massive turns.
The thing that sticks out to me is, like, we've talked about this. If you watch any of our Veil of Eternity videos, we're big fans of these tableau builders, but we got through about half of this deck. And this was our discard pile of all the cards that we discarded to pay for other cards. So anytime you play this game, the chances that you're going to do this again or that again are very slim. It's all about making the most out of the cards that you have in your hand and the cards that you play out early. Like, I got some early cards that wanted me to play a specific way. You kind of want to focus on that. And like, you had that card that gave you extra points early.
Yeah, that was my first card.
So you just kept every card that like gave you points for something. And it was crazy. You were getting like 6 or 7 points a round. And I was like, I had to try to rush the end of the game because I saw how many points you were getting. And I was like, if this keeps going, you're just going to be snowballing in points. And so, but again, those combos won't necessarily be available the next time we play the game.
For sure. But if you dangle a carrot like that in front of me at the beginning of the game, that is exactly where I'm going to chase.
And not to mention, there's a ton of these different source cards too. So even if you're playing a 4-player game, you're going to get a different combination of source cards, which again means you can't just take your favorite source card and build around that every game. You're going to have to always be adjusting. And just like in those other styles, like if you've played games like this, you'll know you might get 2 or 3 turns and realize you're not getting another single card. I've fallen victim to the dig for the right card mentality, and that doesn't work. It's more about, okay, this isn't working, but I did draw another way to score points.
Yes.
Let's focus on that instead. And I find that challenge really interesting.
Yeah, so that is Echoes of Time. If you have any questions at all, please make them in the comments below. We'll get down there and answer whatever we can. Until next time, make sure everyone has fun at the table, and we'll see you then.